Do you remember?
Yeah, we could tell each other who we are.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a good start, probably.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe you should just...
Okay.
He's the main person. He's the one who really has wanted this study.
I come from Italy. I am a sociologist and I work in a mental health department in the central part of Italy, Tuscany.
Okay.
And
Tuscany?
Tuscany, yeah. Livorno, near Pisa.
Yeah.
And in my job, I work with self-help groups, with users, patients. And I am interested to learn about not only self-help group, but about policy che permettono una partecipazione dal basso, come si può dire?
Che permettono...
La partecipazione al basso dei cittadini.
Ja, altså han er interessert i en strategi som gir brukerne, borgerne, medbestemmelse.
Yeah. E also I am a volunteer in a user association, so I work at two level, professional level, and also as a volunteer. Okay. Poi questo dico in italiano, se mi aiuti, che questo filo dell'autoaiuto lega l'Egitto e la Norvegia, cioè questo valore del dialogo e come si potrebbe dire, dell'aiuto tra pari delle persone che si trovano in vari paesi.
Altså, han veldig opptatt av det med selvhjelpsperspektivet i ulike land, da, som jeg nevnte vel, så har de, altså driver de selvhjelpsarbeid i Egypt. Og da å se kontrasten, eller eventuelt likhetene, når han kommer så langt nord som dette, det interesserer ham veldig.
Per me questo, come dire, la dimensione dell'aiuto da pari è una costante, no, in tutte le culture. Invece...
Altså det fenomenet med at likesinnede hjelper hverandre, det tenker han er universelt i alle kulturer.
E invece trovo molto differente i motivi, le motivazioni per cui le persone si ammalano e le strategie con cui guariscono, cioè questo è diverso.
Ja, men grunnene til at folk blir syke er veldig forskjellige i ulike kulturer, og også hvordan de blir friske igjen.
E così siamo molto interessati al suo lavoro sulla cultura, diciamo, lappone, e vorremmo capire quali sono gli ideali di salute dei lapponi.
Derfor han veldig interessert i samekulturen og hva som idealene for helse i den samiske kulturen, for eksempel.
E poi Trine mi ha detto che appunto ha studiato proprio anche i sistemi di cura nella salute mentale a cui lapponi possono accedere.
Ja, så jeg har fortalt ham da, vi har jo lista de over fra at du har studert samer i møte med det norske helsesystemet i psykisk helse. Ok, ja.
E poi vabbè, ci siete oggi, ma non so se ti sei facendo Benedetta.
Benedetta, kan du fortsette, Benedetta?
È lo stesso.
Dette skjer hele tiden, vet du. Da snakker jeg norsk til italienere og italienere til norske.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
I'm a member of a user association in Livorno, and I'm interested in the same.
Okay, yeah.
Hai lavorato molto da volontario a questa associazione durante tanti anni, vero? Hun har jobbet som frivillig i den organisasjonen i årevis. Hun tar seg ferie for å være med fra jobben for å være med på dette.
Yeah, except that I shall introduce myself in a moment, but I have one question in according with Paulo.
Yeah.
What he was talking about this self-help, because and it may be a little bit philosophical, because if it is any use in using the term self-help, then you must first recognize that you are ill or have a problem. And I was reading on the train yesterday some articles about the Sami people and the different cultures, Bear Bongo and some others. And what I was reading there, the main problem from a Norwegian, a Western point of view, is that the Sami people in their culture don't see themselves as ill, or at least not having a disease. It's more like evil powers have made. Then we should, I think we should have that in mind, that to speak of self-help, then maybe you must have this Western thought of being ill or have a disease.
Yeah, have a disease.
Because illness is maybe more the subjective. Yes, so. But okay, so there's something maybe.
Did you get
so.
that?
Okay,
Yeah.
understand.
My name is Odd Volten. I have an education in education, pedagogikk fra Blindern, and I've been a user for some 20 years, and after that user representative, and what we also call experience consultant in Norway, working in the services on the background of my experiences. Now I'm starting to retire a little bit. I'm not so much active in this movement anymore, a little bit. But I'm working in a department for children and youth, where I'm managing a record company. It's a kind of strategy of communication with the community. And they have their own TV station, having programs on the internet and also on a local television station. And also now this recording studio for records, and mostly for children, but also some youth and records grown up. I have written much about this user's perspective and mental health. I've been blogging and writing chapters and books and so on.
You have written a lot of
Yes,
things.
very much. So I'm still very interested, but I think I will maybe write some more, but then I will write things I'm most interested in myself. So far it has been most on request from other academics, books and so on. So yes, I live in Drammen, but my wife is working as a researcher in mental health and drugs. Yes, that's...
Ok, vi får stille litt av det kanskje. Jeg heter altså Trine da, Trine Hammerstad. For me it's difficult to speak English when I used to speak, I speak better Italian than English these days, I think, but I try. I'm an educated social worker, and I have made a thesis in social work for 12 years ago or something like that. I worked a lot at the University of Agder and also at the university colleges in Oslo. I am from Oslo, but I've lived in Kristiansand for 30 years. So, but now I'm beginning piano, little by little, retiring. And I have cooperated with the services and users in Livorno for 10 years. It was 10 years ago I was there for the first time with a group of Norwegians from Agder, the kommunelegen, en representant fra sykehuset, en fra brukerorganisasjonene og jeg som som I've been interpreting all the time, and then I've followed this project all these years, and we have done very many nice things together. This is really I do it from interest, and I had these exams in Italian as very young. So for me, it's a very nice thing to be able to use the Italian language, which I love, and also to make hva heter faglig da på engelsk? Jobbe faglig også. Kombinere språk og fag.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a combination of subjects and
language.
Language, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's nice.
Okay. Yeah.
And we talked a bit before you came that maybe but you must say something too about yourself. I forgot that.
Yes.
Before we start.
Yes. I've been here as a professor since '87. So that's
87. That's quite a long
I
time.
was a young professor then.
Yeah.
And I've been doing research on Sami tradition most of the time. I've been into psychiatry. I was in charge of a research project in Stockholm for 5 years in the first place, and then for another 2 or 3 years. So and that was in a clinic dealing with psychosis and the very heavy stuff in psychiatry. Yeah. So, but most of the time I've been doing research on Sami traditions, and I started with my first scientific work at the university here, and I did my PhD, and so I have quite long experience with Sami, and the main subject is the Sami tradition, and I have had different projects, among them one in psychiatry, studying Sami patients in a Norwegian psychiatry setting here at the University Hospital. So I'll return to that. But I think I should probably say something about Sami tradition in general.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned bongo, so I should because I were before her. She was born into it, but my research goes longer back, much longer back than her.
But because we talked about that before you came,
Yeah.
that maybe for you to decide to begin with the concrete, maybe begin with the research with Sami culture and psychiatry, and then go to the general afterwards, or do you think it's better to do the vice versa?
I think we should start with the tradition, Sami
Okay.
tradition,
Okay.
because the encounter between Sami tradition and, for example, modern medical professionals is as a subject in itself.
Yeah, that's
And it's
true.
very and so I have been studying what is beyond these encounters.
Yes.
What has people with them
Yeah.
to psychiatry,
Yeah.
for example,
Then it's
Yes.
that.
So my approach has been to do field work.
To do field work,
field
yes.
work, yes.
Are you a
Ethnography.
social anthropology?
Yeah, I'm a social scientist here, but I've been working as an ethnographer for most of the time. So I've been really trying to live in Sami communities. So I have been together in one family, extended family in the reindeer herding business for 17 years.
For 17 years?
Yeah, I wasn't there all the time.
I see.
But I was there a month, 2 months, 3 weeks, like that. So I followed that family for 17 years. So and I've been doing field work in different parts of the Sami community, even in the Sea Sami area at the coastline.
Yeah.
So there's a Sami culture, but it's another kind of Sami culture.
Yes, it is. Do you follow the English?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So, what should I start with? I think that this, first of all, it's important to know that Sami is not a literary tradition. It's not they have just lately they got a written language, and so the library, the Sami library, the classic, the old Sami library is the narratives, the narratives material. So the narrative material is like in a Sida, which is a name, the Sami name of the extended family, is first of all, a Sida is a extended family, and they have two locations. The reindeer has their grazing areas in the inland during the winter, that's from December till April, and then they move to the coastline. So this migration system, and they have nowadays they have houses on the coastline as well as in Karasjok. You are going to Kautokeino, but my family they live in Karasjok. So it's at 130 kilometers from, so it's a 1.5 hours drive by car on quite good roads. Yeah. So, and this library is work. I think I have to just give you an idea what it is by telling a concrete how it works with this library, as I call it, and the narrative is some sort of text. So it's a text. So you and in anthropology, there has been this idea that people without a written language is the primitive. The really criteria. But when you come to when you are in this life, you see that for example, memories in the written versions wouldn't work. And one example is that when the herd moves, and the herd moves the herders, it's not the opposite, as we should think that the herders move their flock, but it's the other way around. Because there's an old, and where it's stored in the reindeer, I don't know, and nobody don't know for certain, of course. But for example, in the springtime, when it seems like the reindeer is programmed to go towards the coast, to the coastline. So, for example, if it's very heavy snowing conditions at the coastline, the herders will try to keep the flock in the inland for as long time as possible. But then you have to put on a lot of work to keep the herd in the inland. So, but in normal years, so the herd starts moving in early April, and then they try to, my family, my Sida, try to reach the coastline in a 2 weeks time. And because then starts the calving season, so they give birth to the calves, and then they arrive at the summer grazing areas and stay there till September, and then you have a very hectic 2 weeks time where they mark the calves, the new calves, and that's a science in itself, because they have to and then here you not until you have seen it, because it's not written any places. You cannot read about this. You have to see it, and and they have no need for writing it down, because it's handed over from father to son, and from father to daughter, and from mother to son, and mother to daughter. So you have that sort of teaching system, which is interesting in itself. So it's a part of the teaching is a very important part of the culture. But yeah, and on these moves, these immigration routes, there is a lot of challenges, of course. You could the herd could cause an avalanche in the winter, if and maybe landslope during the border. So it's a tricky parts. It's tricky parts of the route of the track. So and one thing is, and it's just an example of how this narrative material, as I call it, works. Because when you come, for example, the old herders tell the youngsters, the young herders, that, for example, they teach them by telling stories about that. For example, one herder can tell that it was in the spring, and we were with the herd on the way to the coastline, and it was bad grazing conditions. So there was a place where I knew there was good grazing areas, good grazing land. So I let the flock into a valley, but I knew it was risky business. He will probably say I knew it was risky business, and then he tells. This is a story I've heard. He tells that the herd was grazing in that part of the valley, and I was sitting on that side to watch it. And while I sat there, there come an old woman, tried to divide the flock into two, and then he had. This is a language for now my herd is in trouble. It's likely that it's going to be an avalanche herd, taking half of my herd. So he hurried up and get the herd out of this area, and he saved all the reindeer, all this reindeer. Yeah. So, but and it means that there is some tricky challenges in that area. And forever this challenge is marked by that sort of stories, that sort of narratives. So, for example, he will tell to the next generation, to his son or daughter, that while I was doing that, this woman turned up. Or you could have another story of, for example, you could hear something, for example, in the autumn, when the herd returns to the inland again, there is the risky business that they have to cross lakes, and if the ice is not thick enough, you should take the flock. So you have to wait, and the risk with waiting is there's a lot of other flocks, other herds, and they will mix together, and it's going to be you lose calves and you lose reindeer, and so they have a system for avoiding that sort of mixed up herds. But they will also have this in mind, that you have to check if the ice is thick enough, because if the reindeer herd goes on a huge lake and the ice is not thick enough, each reindeer can feel it, that the ice is not thick enough, so it's going some vibration, and they will be scared, and they will start to circle. The reindeer is circling, for example, in the fences when they mark the calves during the autumn. They they really circling in the fences. They have special sort of fences where they mark the calves. So they on the ice, they not thick enough ice. The herd will start to circle, and then the catastrophe is there, because when a huge flock is starting to circling on an ice, yeah. So the challenge is to be very familiar with the terrain, all parts of it, the weather conditions and everything. You have to be very familiar with that, and also know your reindeer, not just your herd, but every single animal. That's amazing, but they have a fantastic perception of this, and a fantastic.
Because they have many animals, haven't they?
Yes, thousands.
Yeah.
So and it's now when everything goes faster, and they have these snowmobiles and so that's changing, but the style and the imperative knowledge is that the better you know things, the better you are off with everything. So on these routes, for a herding family, on these routes, there is stories. And the stories, they are not from yesterday or from last year or 10 years ago. It could be 100 years. Because it's taken care of. All these tricky passages along the route is taken care of. All this knowledge is taken care of, and it's stored in these narratives. So you tell this. You tell this narrative. You tell these stories to the new generations, and it's not that you, as the first anthropologists thought, that you have no other ideas. You have no other knowledge about it. Of course, they have very sophisticated knowledge of the terrain, but this is a way of taking care of the experience. So when a herd is moving from the inland to the coast, or from the coast to the inland, they are not just traveling in a concrete topography, the concrete terrain. They are also traveling moving in a history, in a history. So you have this. And the history is really the library of this family, and it means that you have not all in Finnmark knows all these stories, because every sida has their own area they move in, and they have their own library. So these stories are told from fathers to sons and grandfathers to grandchildren, and so so it works like that. So I realized very early that this idea in anthropology and ethnography that people are primitive because they don't write, that's absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Because it's the most rational way of taking care of experience is by this stories. You take them with you. You take them with you, and they are you have your library, and even the places also get their identity from what sort of landscape it is. So, for example, in Sami language, if you know, for example, the name of a place, the Sami name of a place, you will know what kind of place it is. So it works like that. And this, we should say, this is some sort of, what should we call it, worldview. Is it's in traditional knowledge. It's the really part of it. It's a really important part of it, and in a lot of areas you have this narrative material, And it's not just for the landscape. For example, it was in the research project I did together with a psychiatrist here at the University Hospital. There was a patient, and I'll tell the story about him, because he had this terrible experience that when he was 9 and he had a brother that was 10 at that time, they was out fishing. They had borrowed the boat of their grandpa, and they were out fishing, and when they returned home, they couldn't take this big boat up to the land. So they had this line. They put on stone on the line, and the boat was there. So when the sea was flooding, the boat went away, but it was anchored in a way. But when they come home, they were dinner waiting for them in their grandmother's house, and the oldest of the 2 boys went down to the seaside and should look after the boat, and he didn't return. Yeah. So the younger brother went down to the seaside, and then he found his brother in floating in a way in the sea, and it was too late. He has drowned, so it was alarm with hospital people of course it was a shock for him, and this is an approach to
it's not shocking.
But
I have a question, if you want, or you prefer the question and I try in English. In your experience of field research, you meet a man, a young man who was no agree with the family history, a sort of deviant case.
Yeah.
I'm not sure to explain my concept clearly, but I want to know something about the deviant case, when a person is not agree with the family history. Is it possible?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and in other words, who decide the rules of tell history? Who decide how tell a history of the family?
Yeah, in this world, nature is turning out very much in the family system. So you have to stick to the nature. What if it's bad weather today? You can't do this, and even if you want to do something else, and you have to, for example, if it's bad weather when you move with a herd, you have to be in. You have to simply to stop and to sleep together with So it's very much is determined by this, but there is no. Yeah, you tell this story, but for example, this story about the old woman trying to separating the flock. It's a story, you tell the story, and you don't say, like, for example, in the Western school system, that, so the moral of the story, so you see, the moral of the story is this and that, and you draw all the conclusions, and so you really have turned down the whole idea of having an individual interpretation of it. So they just tell the story. And the young herder will know that this is a story about a challenge. It's a story about the cruel thing that could happen.
Concrete,
Yes, but the thing is that the young herder has to find out for himself or herself what is the real challenge at that place where this story is. So and that's the way they separate the clever readers of the terrain by people's these young herders or herder candidates to deal with the herd and the terrain. So and some is not, some of them is very good, and not some are not so good. So they're not so good in that business, have to go to the university and have education. so because it's a very
Excuse me, but
it's a very sophisticated knowledge, but it's also a very sophisticated way of teaching it. Yeah. So, and it means that, and there are at least it used to be like this, that the young people had to see for themselves. They had access to this material, but no, the interpretations were not fixed. So very different from the school system, where you tell a story and then you also draw the conclusions. You don't draw the conclusion. You keep it open. So it's a very communicative system in that open communicative systems. But of course, there is this nature on your neck, so you have to know for certain. You have to be sure that, but otherwise you could, if you can't judge how thick the ice is, you are going to cause a catastrophe. So you have to have really knowledge, but there's some safeness and knowing is very close connected. Yeah. So it's very different from this. It's very different from, for example, what we in general call the Western system, or the Western rationality, and this is how and why missionaries and priests and researchers came to see that this is a primitive society, because it and the idea of that it was primitive was probably because it couldn't be understood. For example, a fisher, and a salmon fisher in the Tana River has to know exactly where you can catch the fish, and then you have to be very very familiar with the river, and every spring Tana River it's for the tourist. Tana River is the same. It's a big flood, but for the salmon fisher it's a new river every spring, because in April the ice is turning into bergs, and then it explodes in a way, and then you take big stones and move it, and the salmon, when the salmon come from the sea, it's have these places where you are resting, and when you, for example, when the salmon come from the salt water to the fresh water, the first step is to not go further than when the fresh water meets the salt water. So you have to adjust to the fresh water. So when the flood comes up again, the salmon moves away, because then it has used 6 hours to adjust to. So, but the one who is going to catch that fish has to know this, and you have to know how the bottom of the river is formed every year, because it's a new river, not in the maps and the tourist maps, and even for the local people, but the fisherman, the fisherwoman has to know that it's a new river every year. So this knowledge is not. It's changing. It's very. So you have so they have been. They have to be like jazz musicians. So they had to improvise and really see that nature is there all the time, but it's shifting. So you have to have very sophisticated knowledge, not about how it is, but how it can be and how it changes. So that's the key to to make a living out of living on this very challenging nature and temperatures and winters and so and the narrative material, as I call it, is some sort of bottom rock or in that life form, because that's the source when you know how it has been for generations and how you prepare yourself for a new life when you are young and so and I said that this cosmology, because it's a cosmology when you have seen this when you have been in this situation, for example, seeing this woman coming to divide or separate the flock, that sight of the woman, that glimpse of this woman, is a figure taken from the material, the narrative material, the narratives. So, and it turns into some reality, and it's not. And I'll return to that in a moment, because this is when, for example, when this herder comes, if it's unlucky to come in a mental hospital, for example, he is caught by this definition that he has the loss of reality. He has his reality management is not good, and he can be scored on the scale on 26 levels, I think, and 26 criteria for getting for example, a diagnosis of being less or a bit more or quite high on this reality management. But this cosmology, where these figures, they are the figures reminding you. They belong to this Sami, bibliothèque, also library. Sorry, library. So it's not the superstition. It's a reality. So, for example, when this patient, when he was a 38 years old man, he came and lost his brother. He was thinking one day he had been married and he was separated, and he said he was very depressed, and he was then sent to the hospital. But before he was sent to the hospital, he said to himself that now it should be nice, because he had moved away from his home city, and when he was separated, he returned back home again, and his family was gone and his network was gone, and so he said to himself that now it should be nice to have this brother, and he missed his brother in a way. And he said also that they didn't talk much about this tragedy, so he, in a way, he hadn't worked with it, so it was not repaired in a way.
Yeah.
So then, and this is the opportunity that this narrative tradition gives you, that the brother is probably, you could probably put it that way, is created out of this narrative material, because it's quite usual that, for example, you are visited by dead people. Dead people, they come and give you an advice, come to remind you about things, and in the terrain there are certain gatekeepers in every tricky place, for example. Mm-hmm. So this is an important part of the tradition. But when you come to a hospital with this Western rationality, you are caught by this, for example, this definition of reality management. Mm. Because, because you could say, for example, a psychiatrist or nurse or whatever could say here that, well, I heard it myself, that figure doesn't exist, and you know that. And one idea in the research project was, do they put much more medicine on this Sami patient, because they have this opportunity to create their dialogue partners from the narrative material. So and that was not the case. But I think, well, and he said when he came to the hospital that it was okay. He said to me that it was okay because then the brother has turned up, and he said he had become an adult and a mature man. So he was looking at me when he told it, and he to see my reaction, and I said immediately that it was nice because you had missed him so much. Mm-hmm. And then it was okay. And then it started out telling that yes, his brother, he was sent to the hospital, but his brother followed him to the hospital, and they were talking for 3 weeks. And he had this fabulous story that the hospital people wanted him to sleep. And he wouldn't sleep because he was afraid that his brother should leave him. Mm. So while the hospital people wanted the opposite of what he wanted. But anyway, he kept on talking, and I think it was we had access to his journal, we could check that. But anyway, and that's his story, of course. But when he said when 3 weeks has passed, I was ready to leave, and my brother left me. Yeah, my brother left me. But he had one very important comment. He said, after that visit, I felt me as a whole person again, a feeling I didn't have for many years. I felt as a whole person.
After the visit of the brother.
Also after the visit of the brother. Yeah. And now I have not been in touch with him lately, so I don't know if he still keeps in contact with his brother. But this is not an unusual thing in the, and a lot of the patients had that sort of experience, that they were in dialogue with a relative or this what we call ghosts, which is not ghosts. They are there to remind you about the tricky terrain and what risk you can take by doing that and not doing that. So it's not ghosts now, but at the hospital they are surely seen as ghosts. So the Sami patient has to keep a record of what can I tell her. And I asked this patient, have you told the doctor and the psychologist and the nurses that you have been talking with your brother for 2 weeks? And he said, no, of course I can't tell them, because they could think I was crazy. And that's his idea of what is crazy. Crazy is because he don't see himself as crazy. This is a normal part, and I could tell you a lot of stories about normal people who, for example, I had an old informant who got a visitor 2 years before she died, and she came and told her, reconstructed her life history, and she was listening to this reconstruction, and after that she knew that I'm going to die in some time. But and so the visitor was there some, what you say, to reconcile this life, and maybe helped her to mendel down this tricky passages of the life she hasn't been able to focus on. So in a way it's an entirely different world and an entirely different perception of reality in the old classic form. So nowadays we have, for example, when we have a psychiatric clinic in Karasjok, and it has stations, or two or three other places in Sápmi, which is the Sami name for Sameland. Yeah. But and they try to deal with this, because and I think one challenge for psychiatry and healthcare system as a whole is that when people come into these challenges, situations of life, this tradition is somehow popping up. It's heated. So you are looking for signs, and you are looking for all this that you shouldn't look for according to psychiatry. And the problem is that the modern psychiatrists here at the university hospital, or the nurses, they don't know about this tradition. So the good, the smooth meeting between the patient wearing this inside, the tradition wearing it inside, and coping with it, because I was visiting an old woman here in an island, just half an hour's drive from Tromso, and every night she saw these terrible faces in the window. When the darkness fall, there was a lot of. So it was some Rorschach planche on the window. But I couldn't see it, but she was there, and I said, be lucky that you are not hospitalized, because they will turn you into very heavy medication. And somehow she recovered for this. But and so I think one of the challenges for psychiatry is to take this reality as a reality, and not as a fantasy, or as part of the that's and for example, for the Sami professionals, they have a problem, because they are trained in psychiatry, they are trained in psychology. So and I asked them, how much can you do of this? How much can you listen to this and still be considered as of the psychiatric community as a professional person? So and they have tried, for example, in the clinic in Karasjok, they have tried to for example, they take the patients out of the institution, and there have been this Sami tent and some house built of turf and wood. So they can stay there for a day and a night and talk there, and so this, because the setting is like you don't want to talk about this, and the other ghost, the real ghost for the in Sami history, is that the Norwegians and the Swedes and the Danes, the Danes because we were in union with them, and in Russia we have a lot of indigenous groups in Russia. Their experience is that this tradition is pagan, is paganism. So get rid of it and turn into Christianity, and this is irrational and so. So people have to hide. They have to hide, not just themselves, but their tradition. They have to take care of their tradition. So that's why the patient don't tell the psychologist in the hospital or the psychiatrist in the hospital. Don't tell it, because I think the feeling is that they compromise their own tradition, and they don't feel good for doing it. So that's why that it's quite common that when you are in need for help of any kind, it could be physically problems or mental, but they see the traditional healer. The traditional healer is around still, and in a network with you have to be an insider to have access to it. But it's and of course the Sami healthcare personnel, they know about it, so they they don't mind. But here, for example, at the hospital, I don't think people know, and very little at least. And the psychiatrist hospital here is 50 years ago. It was 50 years, 5 years ago maybe.
Mm.
So there is, in a way, too little knowledge about this very specific tradition, which you have just got a glimpse of by the story about the terrain and the patients. But I think that's more illustrating than doing a scientific explanation of how it. But what is important here is that this is a reality. So for example, the narrative material support you with concepts, like we have concepts in the language. For if we don't have a cup, if we don't have a cup, we don't have the concept for a cup, and we don't think, we cannot analyze so they have a lot of concepts which we don't have, and they have access to something we don't have access to because we don't have that language. And that's what Wittgenstein called the depth grammar of the depth grammar of a culture. Is something that the cultural differences, some of the cultural differences are like you have that in one culture and you don't have that in another. Yeah. So and I think here the challenge is to get a healthcare system and a psychiatry familiar with the tradition, and that's why the Sami the Sami community has built up their own expertise on this. So and I think they are this is some painful situation because they cannot be 100% loyal to the tradition, and of course so then it's changed. But we had this terrible policy where the church and the school was colonizing not the land but the mind and the hearts of people, and this is I used to, when I'm going to teach this professional people, I say don't make it true that when the Norwegians and the Swedes and the Finns stop to colonize the Sami mind, you are the professional group that continue that process. And that's a risk. And I think, and it's a big risk if you that you do that if you don't know that's a possibility. And how do you know, for example, this diagnosis with the lack of reality management, which is so important for this, for keeping this knowledge tradition in shape. So because if you introduce the concept lack of reality management on one area, you will also affect the herders' knowledge, because if it's not real there, how does it come that it could be real there?
Okay.
So this is and this is of course a challenge for theory of science and theory of knowledge, and it's in the end very very basic scientific questions. So, and I do some work on that.
I have the second question. I try in English. No, I ask help to train. But in your experience, the Sami mind, the Sami culture has instrument to help persons who has mental problem, but not mental problem in the West way, but persons who has emotions too great for herself. And the society, the Sami society, can do something to help this kind of persons. For example, using discuss about emotion, exist or not. Telling story are only about the challenge against nature, or only about emotion, about esperienze personali emotive. Non so se mi sono spiegato. C'è la domanda proprio in italiano.
Ma abbiamo capito.
L'ho seguito il professore e credo di aver capito tutto o quasi. Mi chiedevo se la società Sami ha degli strumenti per aiutare le persone che hanno comunque un dolore mentale, perché comunque all'ospedale ci vanno.
Altså om samekulturen har instrumenter for å hjelpe samer som kan ha faktisk vanskelige følelser og problemer som de trenger hjelp for, som de da ikke får hjelp for i helsesentrene. Har de i kulturen noe som kan hjelpe?
Ja, they have these traditional healers, but of course they have not the very sophisticated knowledge for this modern life, because it's a modern life too. And for example, with young people, they are not so eager to, they go to the medical doctor and the psychologist. But the Sami is about most indigenous people in the lucky situation that they have trained their own people. So and of course it's important for a patient to come, so for example, a psychiatric patient to come to a professional to reconstruct your history, and for like the Freudian way to turn backwards in your own history, so you find something that could be put light on, and of course, and this is important, but that's probably the same as it should be all over. But I think, the patient often has no idea that I'm depressed or I have anxiety. So you tell this story. You tell this story. A lot of people tell these stories. They have no other experience.
Okay. Neurotic, no. Neurotic. Yeah.
No. So I think, and this is a very complicated process of interpretation and translation, because well, it's a great difference between saying to this man that your brother didn't visit you, to say that yes, he visited you, but what do you think he wanted to tell you? What did you talk about? So if you take this form, it has, because it has a culture of form. The symptom has we could say the symptom has a specific culture of form, and then you enter it, and there is a material there which is very important for psychotherapy, for example, But if you avoid the picture the patient already have, you avoid the problem. And you are left with medication because for example, therapy, the talking cure is dependent on that you take the process, take the departure from the patient's position and not from the psychiatrist. Yes, yeah.
But that's the do they have an alternative? I guess that's what you wanted to ask. Do they have an alternative, et alternativ som virker, sånn at de slipper å gå til den norske helsetjenesten?
Yeah. They do it very extensively.
Ho chiesto se avevano un'alternativa che capace di aiutarli così che non devono andare alla salute di
Yeah, and I could comment it on this way, that the narratives has also a narrative community, because you tell these narratives to your neighbors, your family network. So and one of the old herders, one of my first informants, told some stories I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand them at all. It was about, he was, for example, in a cottage in the mountains, and there was a woman turning up in the middle of the night and started to bother him and make noises, and there's some sort of ritualization of this, as I understand it. But anyway, I realized that, well, the more, and because he was, when he told these stories, which was very dramatic, you could see that he was at the same time relaxed. And my idea, an idea that turned up for me is that the more you tell about that sort of experience, the more you can live with it. It's not unlike what you do in the therapy room.
Yeah,
you tell the story, and of course it's also the case that, and it's not special for this harm, it's for all of us.
Yeah,
If we have this bad experience, we are trying to forget some of it and take forward some of it, so you have a story you can live with.
So you can live with this.
You can live with the story. You can live with that experience, and this relaxed figure with this dramatical experience is, you can see that. My idea is that he has told it again and again and again, and so the drama you could see on the bottom of the whole thing has vanished, because what is left for him is something he can live with. Yeah. And that's universal. That's how our minds and souls work. So it's not any particular about the, but it's not different. The psychotherapists don't do much thing very different, for he's maybe asks questions or so. But here you have this story. So when you have heard a story like that about a dramatic event, sometime it could be not for everybody and not for all, but for some, there could turn up a situation in life where you have use for that. You can use that experience, and then you remember an old man or an old woman telling very relaxed about a dramatic event. So there is some sort of, the context is very important. Not just the content, but the context is also very important, because then you see this relaxed figure. He made it, or she made it, and that's therapeutic support in that.
In a way, it becomes a model.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that these young people, young professionals, they try to. Of course, they come from. They have grown up with us all these stories. I was giving a lecture or a 2-day, one lecture in 2 days for all healthcare stuff in a municipality here in not in Tromso, but in a neighboring municipality.
Yeah.
And they were filled with these stories.
Yeah.
So I said, and in the Norwegian language it's going to be ghosts or yes, ghosts and every song, and when you use that words, you add something to it that is not in the original experience. Yes. So I said, let's do this way. We don't use the Norwegian words. We use the Sami words that you know. And then it was okay. Because you saw that they were shy and shamed by describing their own experience in that language. So that was very striking for me.
So when they can use their own language,
it's very important. It's very important. It's very important.
But then if I understand you right, if the Norwegian healthcare enter in their reality, they can help them also, the Norwegian healthcare. Do you think so?
if you have the knowledge.
If
you have the knowledge, if you don't think that a patient from Karasjok or Tana or a Sami-speaking community is the same as a Norwegian patient, and for example here they have translators in the hospital, so a Sami patient could ask for a translator. But when I asked, for example, in the hospital,